Welcome to the first biology lecture, Cell Structure. My name is Arda from Tutors. In every video, make sure you keep an eye out on the keyword bank on the top right hand corner. This will be updated as the lesson progresses. The keyword bank is there because in order to succeed in biology, you must be able to use keywords in your exams. So why don't we begin? Our first point of discussion will be around the comparison of a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. A prokaryotic cell is a cell that does not contain a nucleus. A nucleus is simply where organized genetic information is stored. We will look into the nucleus a bit more later on. This does not mean prokaryotic cells do not contain DNA, prokaryotic cells just do not contain organized genetic information. Prokaryotic cells are best exemplified using bacterial cells. Therefore, they are unicellular organisms. Uni means one, cellular is of course cells, therefore a unicellular organism is an organism that contains one cell only. On the other hand, eukaryotic cells are cells that do contain a nucleus. They contain this organized genetic information. Eukaryotic cells are animal and plant cells and therefore they are usually multicellular organisms. But there are some exceptions to this rule. Multi means many. Therefore, a multicellular organism is an organism with many types of cells. For example, in humans we have red blood cells, brain cells, liver cells and many other cells in our body. Alright, so at GCSE you must understand the basic structures of both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. We will begin with a prokaryotic cell. The prokaryotic cell in this diagram has two ovals. This is because the outer oval is a cell wall, while the inner oval is a cell membrane. We can call the cell wall a capsule as well. As prokaryotic cells do not contain a nucleus, their genetic information is a bit weird. They have a single loop of DNA over here. Additionally, prokaryotic cells have this circular shape here, which is called the plasmid. These randomly dispersed black dots across the cell are called the ribosomes. The cell contains tail-like structures like so. We call this the flagella. Finally, the remaining space within the inner oval, the cell membrane, is called the cytoplasm. Let's talk about how these structures are related to their function then. The cell wall provides protection and support for the cell. Remember that the cell wall in bacteria is also referred to as a capsule. The cell membrane is border control. It controls what comes in and out of the cell. The single loop of DNA contains some genetic information. However, the plasmid also contains genetic information too. More importantly, the plasmid is the site of mutations. So when a bacteria becomes antibiotic resistant, it is because the plasmid is making changes to the DNA. The ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis. Synthesis is a fancy term in biology which means to make. In other words, the ribosomes make proteins. The flagella helps the cell to move, almost how a wing will help a bird to fly. Finally, the cytoplasm, which is mostly made up of water, is the site of all intercellular chemical reactions. Intercellular means within the cell membrane. Well, how are eukaryotic cells such as animal and plant cells different? Well, eukaryotic cells contain a nucleus. A nucleus can be represented by this black dot here. Animal cells contain only one surrounding shape, in this case a circle. This circle is called the cell membrane. Therefore, an animal cell does not contain a cell wall. The cell contains randomly dispersed black dots, but this time some rectangles too, and these are called the ribosomes and mitochondria respectively. Finally, the remaining space is called the cytoplasm. A plant cell is a bit more complicated. Because it is eukaryotic, it still has a nucleus. It is more rectangular in shape, with the outer shape being a cell wall and the inner shape being the cell membrane. So it is similar to a prokaryotic cell in this regard. Nevertheless, the plant cell wall cannot be called a capsule as the plant cell wall is made up of a totally different material altogether. This ugly shape in the middle is called a permanent vacuole. Just like in the previous two diagrams, the plant also contains ribosomes. Like the animal cell, the plant cell contains mitochondria like so. But in addition to everything we have seen before, the plant cell contains these green bean-like pigments called chloroplast. Finally, the remaining space within the cell membrane is called the cytoplasm. Alright, so we will look at some eukaryotic cell structures and see how they are related to their function. The nucleus is where genetic information is stored. Remember, it is the nucleus that makes the cell eukaryotic, and that is very important to understand. The nucleus also controls the activities of the cell. The nucleus is dubbed by scientists as the brains of the cell, but of course that is not scientific terminology, so we won't be saying that in our exams. I also mentioned the mitochondria, which is the site of a biological process called respiration. We will look into respiration later on in the course, but for now, just know respiration is a process where energy is made. Therefore, scientists dub the mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell. All other structures explored in a prokaryotic cell, such as the ribosomes, perform the same function in eukaryotic cells as they would in a prokaryotic cell. For the plant cell, the cell wall provides protection and support, but this time it is made up of cellulose. Make sure you don't think a prokaryotic cell is made up of cellulose, only a plant cell wall is. Cellulose is a strong sugar molecule. Do you remember the ugly shape in the cell called the permanent vacuole? This contains something called cell sap. Cell sap is basically a mixture of sugars, water and other mineral ions. The cell sap's function is to provide the cell with turgidity. Turgid means swollen. If you remember the green pigments called chloroplast, this is the site of a biological process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is when the plant uses sunlight to make sugars, and we'll look into that later on in the course. Now here are some possible 1-mark questions that can come up, and I want to make sure you are confident in them. An organism called archaea is a prokaryotic cell because it does not contain a nucleus. Also, yeast is a prokaryotic cell. Although it is unicellular, it still contains a nucleus, therefore it is a eukaryotic cell. Alright, topic questions for this lesson then. If you'd be so kind, pause me, unpause when you are ready for us to review it like there is nothing to it. Hopefully you remembered that both plant and animal cells are eukaryotic cells, so the nucleus cannot be correct, since eukaryotic cells are defined by having a nucleus. The cell membrane is also found in both animals and plants, so choice B is also wrong. Choice C for champion states the chloroplast. This one is correct as animals do not convert sunlight into energy, only plants do this. Confirm it and grab it. The mitochondria is also wrong, as both animals and plants contain them. Speaking about the mitochondria then, have a go at this one. When you're ready, unpause and we will tackle it and handle it. Answer choice F states the role of the ribosome, so F is wrong. G states the role of the chloroplast. H states the function of the cell membrane, which is the border control. Therefore, J for jumping jacks accurately describes the function of the mitochondria. Take it and bake it. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to do the following.